It's been a wild ride. 2024 has been a year to remember from many different angles. But in this episode, I will cover, just from off the cuff of my mind, the most memorable moments of Through Conversations podcast 2024. It's been a year that has transformed the podcast. We created a new brand, a new logo, a new vision for the podcast. We hosted up to, we're above 110 episodes. We have connected with up to millions and millions and millions of listeners, of people watching on YouTube, streaming on Spotify. It's been such a breakthrough year in all facets of the podcast and of the word itself, and I'm humbled and I'm honored, and it's just the beginning. Next year I do expect us to reach even bigger feats, have bigger guests that I admire, guests that I don't know yet, guests that maybe we will uncover their work together. They don't have to be the typical guests from other podcasts, other shows, mainstream guests. We're also trying to find new voices that are exploring the truth through conversations with the most brilliant minds. And this is Alex. I'm the host of the show. And today I'm just riffing. I'm sharing with you a recap into 2024 and what to be on the lookout in 2025. I have an anchor bias, in the sense that, or maybe a recency bias, that's a better word, in which I had just recorded my most memorable episode of 2024 in the past month with Dr. James Hollis. It was hands down one of the most meaningful and wisdom-packed episodes. I would be confident to say that through the whole existence of the podcast. It's been one of those episodes that I cannot forget. It's always in my mind, the gems of wisdom that he shared from so many facets, but mostly regarding development of self, how to embrace fear, how to really have an introspective look into how we can honor our time on earth. And I've been so invested in that idea, honoring our time on earth. And if you've been in the podcast throughout the year, you've heard me say this several times, at least in my solo episodes and some of the podcast interviews that I've done as well. But I wrote a book called The Time Is Now, a guide to honor your time on earth. And it's really a guide to really, I'm going to be redundant, but to honor our time on earth. How can we truly think about that? Our relationship with work, our relationship with our career, with our own sense of self, really thinking that we're just here for a blink of an eye in terms of the cosmos, of the perspective, and how Dr. James Hollis comes into the equation, into that conversation is really breathtaking. He said a quote that has really stayed with me in the past month and has really changed the way I approach life, or I think I want to approach life, which is step into your fear in order to step into a life. Wow. And letting that sink in is just... I'm not going to generalize as much, but I think we have been conditioned into some capacity to shy away from our fears, to see fear. And I'm not saying, and also Dr. James Hollis said this during our interview, when we refer to fear, we're not saying you shouldn't run from a lion chasing you, right? That kind of fear is a survival mechanism. But in modernity, many of our fears are imagined, almost 99% of our fears. Fear of failure, fear of standing out, fear of not achieving our dreams, fear of speaking in public, all of those fears, fear of rejection, fear of not being approved, which is fear of rejection. So that kind of fear is what we're referring to, the imagined one, and we shy away so much from it. In my book, I discuss Jim Carrey, who's honestly one of my favorite people on earth, even though I haven't met him. Jim, if you're watching this, or if someone close to Jim is watching this, please, I send you a big hug, and I thank you for all of the movies that you've done and all of your creative output, your art, sharing it with us. and also just being yourself and showing us that it is possible to carve a path based on who you are rather than who others want you to be. So if you're watching this or someone close to Jim Carrey is watching this, please join me for an interview. Please read my book. I speak a lot about you. But in this example specifically, I discuss how Jim, during a commencement speech, he mentions his father shying away from what he was really drawn into, which was comedy, making people laugh, and he chose a stable path. He was afraid of the riskier path, which was following his true self, and he chose something that would be more comfortable, which was accounting, being an accountant. And something that really also sticks out from just writing on my book, The Time Is Now, about Jim is that he said that you can succeed at something you hate, but you can also succeed at something you love. Or maybe it's the opposite way. You can fail at something you hate, so why not fail at something you love? And I think both remain true, that they connect with Dr. James Hollis's ideas, of step into your fear in order to step into a life. And it's just a reminder that maybe our fear is not there as to make us run away from it, but rather as a signal into what we should lean into. And it's quite interesting. I kept reflecting on this idea a lot during the past month. Like I mentioned, that episode, even though it hasn't reached millions of people, those who have watched or have tuned in into the episode have said comments that are breathtaking, which you'll see here on the screen, which include, this episode came at the perfect moment for me. James Hollis is such a gem of wisdom. He's so wise. One of the best interviews they've seen in their lifetime. All of those comments that are truly breathtaking. And so it connects a lot, these ideas, that even if they don't have millions of views, it's so impactful. And I've been reflecting on fear as being one of the most tangible feelings we have. It's easy to identify when what we're afraid of, speaking on stage, or when we're afraid of taking that leap of faith. It's something we feel, or at least me, I feel in my chest, I feel in my throat, and you start palpitating a lot. Your heart starts racing, and so it's interesting because we want to shut down that fear. We want to shut down that feeling when it paradoxically is one of the most tangible ones. And so when I heard Dr. James Hollis speak on how to really embrace that fear, befriend it, don't judge it, and examine it, it's one of the closest indicators of our intuitions, our sense of self telling us something related to who we are or who we can become if we lean into that feeling, if that makes sense. It's so tangible that rather than shutting it down, if we lean into it, it might lead us to a path, a serendipitous path of finding our sense of self and just creating a life and taking that risk, taking that leap of faith. Another quote that was truly, it's part of the introduction of the episode and it's just breathtaking, is one that Dr. James Hollis shares in the episode related to Carl Jung, which he wrote in 1912, which goes in the following way. He said in strong language, quote, "The spirit of evil is negation of the life force by fear. Only boldness can deliver us from fear. And if the risk is not taken, the meaning of life is violated." And Dr. James Hollis goes on and said he's said to people that if they put it in their mirror, type that up, and see it on their bathroom mirror every day, they're going to become more conscious, more mindful of how the role of fear, typically through avoidance, is running their lives, our lives. So he says, don't judge that fear. Recognize that you also, as a conscious being, have an agenda to expand your life in the face of that fear. And so I've never heard anyone said it in that way. It's the first time that I really hear someone say in such tangible terms, so resonating, that we can create a life, we can build a life along our fear, having our fear guide us, having our fear steering in a way the path, you know? And it's so interesting because fear plays a role through avoidance of taking a leap of faith, of following our intuition, of getting to know ourselves, and just thinking that we have a role that we need to fulfill because society told us so, because we have to reach someone else's quotas or expectations of who we should be in this reality. And that really resonates with me. I speak a lot about that in my upcoming book, The Time Is Now, because, again, it just really connects with how we can honor our time on Earth, which is, hopefully, knock on wood, 85 to 100 years. It's nothing. It's really nothing. It might look like it's a lot, but it's nothing. Think about how much time has passed, on the cosmos existence, and think about the generations before you, 5 generations, 3 generations before you, or the upcoming ones. How they thought they were living an immortal life, and there was always a chance the next day to pursue your dreams, the next day to take that leap of faith, the next day to find your true potential, to explore your creativity. And this ties into what my best friend just told me. We had a call very recently, and he said that today is the youngest you will ever be. And wow, that's also profound. And for me, it just means that the time is now to really go and explore that potential, explore what my heart is asking me to find about myself, and to lean into that fear, be open to living life experiences, regardless of the fear being there or not trying to block it and not trying to just repress it or avoid it. And as you can see, I can speak about this whole day, but I gotta move on. I don't like to toot my horn and just brag about any episodes I do, because all of them have a fond place in my heart. But this episode with James Hollis really will remain, at least for now, one of the most memorable ones. And so I do want to promote that more. I do want more of you to watch it, because it can really impact your life in ways that have impacted mine positively. And I see life in a very exciting way of just the serendipity that can come from it, from what he says, and how to engage with our time on Earth. And so please do give it a try. Share it with a loved one if it resonated with you. And with that brings me to my last episode, my last conversation on the podcast, which was with Kenneth Stanley. He's the co-author with Joel Lehman of Greatness Cannot Be Planned. And this is all about serendipity and AI and the future of artificial general intelligence and how it may impact creativity and careers. And it also ties into my book, which I wrote about their book in my own book. So meta books, and the concept being just thrown to all of you. And with Kenneth, it was very serendipitous as well, because I had already published an episode discussing their book, and discussing a chapter of my own upcoming book. Again, okay, I have to do this. The Time Is Now, A Guide to Honor Your Time on Earth. I'm going to have to say it multiple times, and you're going to see it multiple times on screen, because I'm excited for it. I can't wait to publish it and share it with all of you. And so I published this episode on X. I published this episode, the full episode, on YouTube and on Spotify and on Apple Podcasts. And Kenneth liked the post, and he shared it. He reposted it. And I reached out to him. I told him, hey, thank you so much for the follow, and thank you so much for sharing it with your own network, this episode. Your ideas truly resonate with me. I have your book with me. It's seriously highlighted throughout the entirety of the book. All pages have been underlined. And I would love to host you and share your ideas with my audience, with you. And so he said yes, he accepted. And our interview, our conversation was, again, also breathtaking. We discussed how, again, not to put fault into anyone, but we discussed how our systems, our institutions, such as our educational system, have put a lot of premiums and incentives into just staying into one path and carving a linear path into our life, not allowing serendipity and magic to emerge from following our intuitions, from finding our own callings in reality, in this life, and just exploring what we have to offer through our own colors to life. And so it was a very unique episode because he also shared an example in which his own son is using programming to just create little robots that dance. And it's so funny because while Kenneth believes this may not have a tangible, need, there is no useful outcome of it. The biggest gem of wisdom here is that he's allowing his own son to explore that intuition, to say, I find this interesting. Let me lean into that. Let me see what happens if I follow my own intuition, my own interests. And with the upcoming wave of AI, the revolution that's happening in the workplace with newer generations, Gen Z, millennials, and also older generations who are starting to question their own relationship with work and questioning the work-life balance equation and questioning how they can honor their time on Earth. And with all of this coming into play faster than expected, and also with AI potentially automating, at least what I want to happen is it'll automate all of the boring, monotonous jobs that can be replaced, allowing us to open that space, open that free time into exploring our creative potential and sharing our art with all of us. Maybe finding the new Vincent van Gogh or the new Da Vinci's, the new Einsteins, because a lot of times we're just spent in the grunt work that might not be as creative as we want to, or at least is not tapping into our interests because we're deferring it for later, deferring it for after retirement, finding who we truly are after we have enough money saved, which this is not to blame anyone. I mean, economy is really is bad. The economy is very difficult. And the systems that have existed now do make it difficult to make a living finding our creative potential. And so this is not to just rip anyone by making a living. It's actually also commendable. But with Kenneth, it was very interesting because it might be that the future of work be more human-centered, it might be more creative-centered, and his book Why Greatness Cannot Be Planned can serve as that guide to just tap into that potential and create a new wave of you could say like a new industrial revolution, a 2.0. We need more breakthroughs. We need more risky ideas being explored in science. We need more risky ideas explored in art, in technology. We need more risky pursuits, more risky leaps of faith that lead us to stepping stones into innovations. We also discussed how jazz was found. No one actually wrote on their notepad, I'm going to find the key to building jazz. No, it was just a matter of exploring interest, exploring different genres. Elvis Presley didn't set his sights into becoming Elvis Presley. He just went into a music labeling studio because he wanted to sing a song for his mom. And then serendipity happened. He followed his interests. That's how we found Elvis Presley. The computer wasn't found because they wanted to find the computer. The computer was found because a lot of stepping stones into finding connectivity and vacuum tubes connected all to become the computer. And so in today's reality, we're very objective driven. We have to find the next way, a logical way to finding AGI, for example, or finding a cure for diseases. And paradoxically, the more objective driven we are, the less closer we are to finding those answers. And so to build these new innovations, to build this new future of work, of reality, of honoring our time on Earth, we need to be open to serendipity. We need to be open to the prospect of not knowing the answers, but asking the right questions that are aligned with who we are and following those questions, following those gut feelings. And so that episode in itself was also breathtaking. And while those two are the most recent ones. Again, I have a recency bias here with all of you. There's been so many other episodes regarding UFOs. I spoke with Sarah Seeger, MIT planetary scientist, on UFOs, on exoplanets. I spoke with Lawrence Krauss about, extraterrestrial life. I spoke about the situation in Israel, the situation in the Middle East, with so many different guests, so many different experts. I spoke with Eric Jorgensen about progress, about building infinity. I spoke with Kevin Kelly, what advice he has for younger generations. With Nita Farahani on the science of neurotech. Wow, with Gary Nolan on Neil deGrasse Tyson on UFOs and Eric Weinstein. So many, Moran Serif, another neuroscientist, and the list goes on and on. Avi Loeb about aliens, Carissa Beliz on surveillance technology, Ari Wallach on A Brief History of the Future, Daniel Lieberman on psychology, Mike Benz on AI surveillance, Paul Post on the elections, John Vervaeke. It's just the list goes on and on and on. And so I cannot wait for 2025. I cannot wait for us to become a bigger community, one that is exploring the truth through conversations, one that is engaged on this pursuit of curiosity, of truth, and one that really explores the boundaries of what is possible if we engage on conversations that really align with who we are and that arise from a genuine place of curiosity, of finding out why we're here, how we can honor our time on Earth, how we can explore the deepest questions of the universe. And so with that, I just want to say thank you again for joining me. I cannot wait for 2025. So many new things are going to come regarding the podcast, regarding my book that I want to share with you. So many new things. And I believe that 2025 will be the biggest year of the podcast because I'm really zeroed in and laser focused into delivering the most truthful, genuine, sincere, and interesting conversations to all of you that push the boundaries on, podcasting has become just a cycle. You're going through the motions, right? Asking the same questions. Everyone's asking the same questions, are focused on quality of the studio, are focused on all of the perimeter rather than the depth of the questions. And it's not to toot my own horn again, but I really have my own genuine questions that stem out of my own interests and also hearing your own interest and your own comments into what you want to hear. And so I do want to host the biggest guests. I want to host the most unique guests. I want to keep having these solo episodes where I can just vent out my ideas with you. And with that, the time is now. Thank you for watching this episode of Through Conversations. My team is so brilliant that they're going to put the book, The Time Is Now, here and the logo of Through Conversations here. I also feature a lot of interviews and excerpts of the interviews from on the book itself. So everything's connected. And with that, have a great new year. Happy holidays. And we'll see you come next year, 2025. Take care.